Up next on Waveform Rock Video, a visit with musicologist, rock critic, and former closet musician, Kenny Weissberg of Kenny and the Kritix. Kenny Weissberg moved to Boulder in 1971 and quickly established himself as one of the area's premier rock journalists and free-form radio personalities. Over the years, his interviews, reviews, and features have appeared in the Denver Post, Rocky Mountain Magazine, the Daily Camera, and numerous national publications. Radio listeners still talk about his visionary programming, which mixed new wave, rhythm and blues, and urban rock, with interviews with the likes of Elvis Costello, Bill Murray, Tom Waits, Allen Ginsberg, and the Firesign Theater. Like most rock fans, Weissberg harbored secret fantasies about taking center stage as a rock singer. Well, unlike most of those fans, Weissberg made his dream come true by assembling Kenny and the Kritix in December of 1980. The sold-out shows and subsequent good reviews encouraged Weissberg to continue with his theatrical rock shows. Tonight, we'll catch Weissberg's act and discuss the world of rock and rock radio with Kenny Weissberg. After 10 years of being a rock critic and disc jockey, why did you come out of the closet with Kenny and the Kritix?
Well, it's been on the back burner of Fantasyland for a long time. I started buying records when I was 7 years old. My parents would take me to E.J. Corvettes in West Orange, New Jersey, and the first couple of records I bought were Love Me Tender by Elvis Presley, Butterfly, Charlie Gracie, Young Love, Sonny James, kind of mid-50s rockabilly styles, and I loved it, and I would stand in front of the mirror and play these records and sing along with them. It was really my first level of self-expression. But then music kind of drifted to the back burner. In 1980, I had 4 part-time jobs, two on the radio, 1 managing a nightclub, and 1 as a weekly newspaper columnist. And within a 2-week period, I quit 2, got fired from 1, and the grant for the other 1 ran out. So from 4 jobs, I had no jobs, and I was on the verge of being very depressed and very fatalistic. I didn't know what was going on. And so I said, this is the time. I'm going to put together a rock and roll band and avoid depression at all costs.
Kenny and the Kritix actually a reflection of what you feel is the best in rock music today, as well as some of your own compositions?
My goal was to take songs that are my favorites, many that I used to play on my radio shows but aren't readily available to the public, and sing them. It's always fun to sing along with your favorite songs, but when the songs are not those that are readily available to the masses, it made it all the much more fun. The 70s have brought on this rock as business mentality, and bands that probably kicked ass in the 60s that are still around in the 70s are thinking about feeding their families, and the music has become much more generic, and I wouldn't even say wholesome, but words like that come to my mind. You have to stay within strict confines, and you can't, I'm not saying that everyone has to be like Carla Bley and go out there into the ozone, but the mentality of making music has become oriented toward corporations and survival, and the soul, the guts of rock and roll seems to have disappeared in the 70s. So I knew that when I would take the stage, as opposed to seeing the bands that just get up there and sing their lush harmonies and play their beautiful orchestrated chords and make it very kind of corporate rock, that I was going to jump off of pianos and leap into the air. If there's anything I can't stand, it's the fact that I've grown very bored of the music that's being made today. It's become a very structured, tight, it's antithetical to what rock and roll used to be in the 50s and 60s.
Well,
lot of the soul has been diluted from radio, and you can listen to many stations on the band, just go from station to station, and if the format is the same, if it's rock and roll, you might hear the same AC/DC cut on 3 stations, and the same with country. There's so many country stations in Denver, they're all playing the same things, and the only thing that differentiates the station is when they do promotions like, we will not play fewer than 4 consecutive songs or you'll get your money back. You can turn in your radio and get a television. Okay? And thus radio has totally lost its appeal to me as a disc jockey and someone who wanted to make a career in radio, and as a listener. I can't listen to the radio anymore.
The light of the shining night sky, doing anything my radio advised. With every one of those late night stations playing songs that bring tears to my eyes, I was seriously thinking about hiding the receiver when the switch broke and it's old. They're saying things I can hardly believe, they really think we're getting out of control. Radio is the sound salvation, radio is cleaning up the nation. Say you better listen to the voice of reason. They don't give you any choice because they think that it's treason. So you had better do what you were told. You better listen to the radio.
Within the midst of all the clutter, there are some very emotive current rock and rollers that are as meaningful to me as Chuck Berry or Ray Charles or Otis Redding were in the earlier years. I think the person that's had the most profound effect on me in the 70s was Bruce Springsteen, and he continues to have a very strong influence on my life and my musical tastes. Other urban, streetwise singer-poets like Graham Parker, Elvis Costello, the Iron City House Rockers. Joe Bruschecki is someone that people have not heard that much about, but he's an amazing songwriter. Really feels what he writes and sings it the way he feels. It's very emotional. Garland Jeffries is someone else who is part black, part white, part Jewish, part Puerto Rican, and all of that comes out in his songs. So it's like taking what Neil Young and James Taylor and some of the mellower singer-songwriters of the early 70s were doing and adding punchy rock and roll back into it. It's not just, oh, look at me, I'm sensitive, I'm lonely, I need love. It's taking the feelings of the street, the rock and roll feelings of the 50s, updating it, not adding a 100-piece string section, not adding a brass ensemble just because it makes it sound full. It's the garage mentality returning to rock and roll again, but you really have to sift. It's like needles in a haystack. It's a trite analogy, but it's accurate.
That's if you think your heart is strong, and you're never enough to in this world alone. Alone, buddy, there ain't no peace of mind. I keep searching till I find my special one. Too hard for better than one. Too hard for better than one. Too hard for better than one. My special one. Too hard for better than one. Too hard for better than one. Too hard for better than one.
The happiness of this whole thing for me is that it has shown me that no matter what, if you have a dream, life is short. I mean, I'm a little bit fatalistic. I have dreams about the neutron bomb being dropped and eyeballs melting into the pavement, you know, kind of just like, I don't know, that's kind of grotesque, I know what you mean, but that's not exactly what propelled me into doing Kenny and the Kritix, but I think from now on, I won't be afraid to do what I dream about doing?
Well, I remember when I was growing up, I think when we were all growing up, it was always mentioned, you could be president someday.
That's absolutely correct. If you have a dream, you can live it out. For instance, this man, he had a dream. And who would have ever thought that he could have become president at 70? Or that I could have been a rock and roll singer at age 32? It can happen. It can happen to you.